Well, guys, it is the eve of fantasy football, week one. I can't wait until this season starts. I'm always counting the days down, and we're finally so close. It feels right there because we are right there. So we're live tonight answering fantasy football questions for week one fantasy football. So make sure to go down there, put your question in, and while you're at it, go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. And I figured while we wait for the questions to come in, I think it's probably a good idea for me to go through some of the most asked about questions that I've seen in my videos about like start-sit decisions, stuff like that. So I figured now is probably a good time to get to some of those questions right now. So one of the biggest ones that I have seen personally is what was the deal with the Seahawks not being included on yesterday's defense ranking video? So we could talk about that one for sure, because I saw somebody say that they think that I didn't include the Seahawks defense so we would, so you guys would react in the comments. And that really wasn't the case. Like, I really didn't, it wasn't about that at all. I can tell you why. Because the Seahawks defense last year was a total disappointment. They also had incredible personnel last year, and there was no reason that they should have been that bad. But the defense first head coach, Pete Carroll, I don't understand why they would be that bad. So all of a sudden, Mike Macdonald comes into the picture for Seattle, right? And people are just now associating the Seahawks' great roster defensively with an uptick in production because Mike Macdonald is now the head coach over there. I don't see that. I don't personally see that. I don't see where things are coming from that. I mean, I can understand it at the long term. The long-term game here, I can understand. I do think that this defense does have talent. I think the offense has plenty of talent. Is Mike Macdonald the guy, though? Because I'm not convinced of that whatsoever. So I have no idea if Mike Macdonald is the actual answer here. All I can say is that the Broncos offense, I really don't think is going to be as bad as people think. I think that they're well run by Sean Payton. I think that's a massive upgrade that they had at quarterback. Just getting Russell Wilson out of the building is a huge deal for the Denver Broncos. Now they have Bo Nix, who, if you watched in the preseason, was really sharp. And of course, it's preseason. But what I was really interested in watching with the Broncos is how much they were protecting him and getting the ball out of his hands quick. Sean Payton had a quote recently where he said, what did he say? He said, the testament to a good offensive line is how quickly the quarterback gets the ball out of his hands. That's how you can make a bad offensive line look good. That's basically what he said. And so all those things just kind of come up for me when I think about why I rank the Seahawks defense as low as they were. You could see the full top 32 defense rankings on the Patreon. There's a link to that in the description. So we've got some questions rolled in. Kevin, what's going on, man? Good to see you in here. Chaludo88X. I'm excited. Keep up the good content. Well, I appreciate you being in here tonight. And make sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel to show your support if you haven't already. And join Underdog today. There's a free Travis Kelce line if you haven't taken advantage of it yet. If you're not on Underdog, it's a huge way to support me. A huge way to support my channel if you go on Underdog and take advantage of that pick right now. But it's also free. It's not free to put to play it, but it is free in the sense of it's a guaranteed win. So it's a pretty sweet deal, and it definitely helps support me a lot. Tyler Vensky, don't you think Justin Herbert could be a sleeper quarterback this year? Super flex. I drafted a ton of Justin Herbert in best ball leagues this year. On Underdog, I drafted tons of Herbert. He was one of my most drafted players all season, and I definitely think that he's got a lot of potential to be a sleeper quarterback. It's just kind of weird, saying that he's a sleeper, because Justin Herbert has been kind of a fantasy darling at quarterback since his rookie year. And really, that was his best year. He's kind of declined every year since then in fantasy football terms. So it's a little weird to think of him as a sleeper. Yeah, I think, of course, Justin Herbert has tons of upside in fantasy football. Not as much as he used to, because there's no Keenan Allen and there's no more Mike Williams there. Their receivers are definitely still a mystery, and it's a work in progress offense for sure. So I don't think he'll start super hot, but I think by week 8, week 9, when teams are falling apart and the good teams are revealing themselves, Justin Herbert's going to have some upside, especially during those weeks. JT Blue Gobs, what's going on? Should I drop Moss for Dowdle? My starting running backs are Bijan and James Conner, plus I have Dobbins on the bench. Corum and Jaleel are also available. And should I keep Leggett for pickup Polk? So let's go one at a time. So drop Moss for Dowdle. I would not do that personally. I think that Moss probably has more long-term value because I like Cincinnati's offense. They have more potential to be a top 10 offense this year than I think Dallas does. And that sounds weird to say because like they're both usually really good offenses. The Bengals this year, I think I just like them better than Dallas because Dallas's offense is really reliant on CeeDee Lamb. Like, that's my biggest problem with Dak this year in fantasy is that if CeeDee goes down, he's an ankle twist away from being pretty mediocre in fantasy. Jake Ferguson's a good tight end, but he's not taking the top off the defense. He's not CeeDee Lamb. You know what I mean? So it's like, even though he's got technically two weapons I like, including Jake Ferguson, this offense is really dependent on CeeDee Lamb. So Rico Dowdle just being in that situation, I like him, but probably not more than I like Zach Moss. I'd probably try to pick up Rico Dowdle using another player on your bench. And really Rico Dowdle is more of like in like middle to deeper leagues, I would say, because he's still kind of going undrafted a lot. Starting running backs are Bijan, Connor. You have Dobbins on the bench. Yeah, if anything, I would drop Dobbins. Yeah, that's the guy I would drop because Dobbins is not guaranteed to be a starter, and even if he is, like, how long does he stay healthy? Dude's running with like one leg these days. I like J.K. Dobbins. I've always liked the prospect. Drafted him a bunch in underdog drafts this year, but you know this guy he's had a rough go. He's had a rough go, and he's not even guaranteed a starting spot where Rico Dowdle, if you watch the running back ranking video I did the other day, if you haven't watched that, first of all, go watch it. Because in that video I explained there was a report from an insider inside that Dallas facility saying, yeah, Rico Dowdle is going to be the starter here. The other part of the question was, should I keep Leggett for pickup or pick up Polk? You know, I went through a time where especially the earlier portion of the offseason, I was drafting a ton of Xavier Leggett because I love the prospect. I still love the prospect, but the guy is like he's had a bad camp. There's been a lot of bad reports. Like he's been injured a lot, and even if he was healthy, what I saw was not positive. Like he was dropping a lot of balls. He didn't look very polished. So there's a reason that their first round pick is not starting right away. They don't want a repeat of Quentin Johnston and what happened with the Chargers last season. So I would rather pick up Polk personally, and he's not even my favorite. Like if Josh Palmer of the Chargers is on the waiver wire, that's a better waiver ad than Jalen Polk. But Jalen Polk definitely has had better reports, and he looks to be, you know, if not the wide receiver 1, the wide receiver 2 in New England. Low upside offense. So I don't ultimately love Jalen Polk, but at this point over Leggett, yeah, that's a no-brainer for me. Shields Reality, what's going on? Chaludo 88X. I picked up the Chargers defense. They could be in play for the next 3 games. You know, that's really funny that you say that because I was looking at it today and just looking at their next 3 games. If I remember correctly, next weekend they have week 2 they have Carolina. Obviously this week they have the Raiders, and then week 3 they have the Steelers. If I had that correctly, and I was thinking to myself, man, like this is going to be a solid defensive play for the first month of September, really. So I have that a lot of that goes into account. Like when I play in my own fantasy leagues, is I love to stream defenses anyways. So if I can get a defense like the Chargers, who people are low on this year because of what they did last year, I've explained why I like them better this year. And also, if you can get your hands on a defense like that, then look for the defense that has the best schedule That's the move that you should be doing for sure. So yeah, the Chargers defense, I love them right now. Kevin S., I was wondering if you can rate 12th pick, 14-man, full PPR, one running back, one tight end. Quarterback is Kirk Cousins, Garrett Wilson, Deebo Samuels, Michael Pittman, Mark Andrews, 49ers defense. And then your bench is Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, Tyler Algier, and Deshaun Watson, I'm assuming. 14-man league. Yeah, I mean, considering it's a 14-man league, it's always good to add context. There are some picks on here that I would not personally make. Like, for example, we'll start with quarterback. Quarterback, I don't love your quarterback situation personally. I think your quarterbacks are weaker than I like. My thing this year going into drafts was basically on every format, whether it was best ball, whether it was redraft on ESPN or sleeper. I was going with quarterback early because I thought the quarterback prices were good this year. I didn't think they were too high. I was getting Josh Allen like the 4th round in a lot of drafts. So I just found that to be more worth it than banking on someone like Kirk Cousins, for example, who is fine. Like, he's obviously been really good with the Vikings, but I just can't, like, people seem to be able to get past this faster than me. My thing with that whole situation is this is a mid-30-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles tear he's going to now a team that is not offense first. Like that, their head coach, Raheem Morris, is defense. And some people don't think that matters. It friggin' matters. Like, here's the funny thing about fantasy is that someone commented this on my page the other day when I was asking for people's hot takes. Someone commented, my hot take is that everybody has a plan until the season starts. And I just laughed out loud because I was like, it's so true. Fantasy football, everybody, like, there's lots of creators out there who just, give you the perfect draft strategy. And the reality is, guys, a lot of these fantasy creators don't watch football. They don't. And I can tell you that for a fact because when it comes to topics like defenses and kickers and IDP, you could tell if they're only watching one side of the ball, which is offense. I watch everything. I love this game. And that's the reality, is that when we get into the season, you have to throw everything out. You have to crumple up your draft board. You have to crumple up ADP in drafts and just be willing to move on from guys. So, my thing with a guy like Kirk Cousins is that he was probably viewed as like a good ad, like late in drafts. I'm not big on him. Not big on Kirk Cousins. I think your weakness is probably your quarterback here because your tight end, love Andrews here. Your wide receivers are good. Combination of high upside and stable floors. So, yeah, I think you have a good team all around. I would just say, personally, I would have tried to get a quarterback earlier. Shields Reality. Hey, should I start Brandon Ayuk or Calvin Ridley, PPR 10 team? Good question. I think that people obviously are worried about Brandon Ayuk week 1 because, I don't even know what to expect. I have no idea. It's a guy who missed basically the whole offseason. It wasn't just like he missed it. Like, the dude, he actually admitted it the other day in his post-contract press conference. Brandon Ayuk was talking to the media. He was like, yeah, I kind of made that harder than it should have been. It's like, yeah, you did. Like, it didn't need to be that much because he ended up taking the offer that was on the table from John Lynch for like a while. So it just gave me bad vibes, man. Overall, though, like the upside with Ayuk is just higher than Ridley right now. And I get it. Ridley is a guy that I've drafted quite a bit this offseason. I love his price so much more than last year. I was calling people crazy for drafting Calvin Ridley at cost last year. This year, it's a lot better. It's a lot better. So, it's just a situation where I think Calvin Ridley, I would want to see it before I played him over Brandon Ayuk, who I know is in the higher upside offense. And if Sauce Gardner falls, someone is going to be Debo. He's going to follow Debo around. So I would play Brandon Ayuk personally. Kevin S., you helped me a lot last year figuring out defense. Let's get it this year. Let's get it, baby. Love the defensive side of the ball. I grew up a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, so obviously I'm a, old school defensive guy. That's why it's easy for me to talk about defenses in my content as well, and because every point friggin' matters. So I appreciate you. Kevin S., I appreciate the super chat. Keep it up. Now, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate the super chat. As the chat fills up, guys, and I get more questions, I won't realistically be able to answer all of them. But the way to jump the line is to do a super chat. If you want to get your question answered immediately, that's how you jump the line, is by giving a super chat. NMB, 12-team PPR Superflex. Goff, Kevin said, let's go Packers. That's good. Packers-Eagles game is going to be an interesting one, for sure. NMB, Goff, Bijan, Ford, Lamb, Waddle, Cup, Kincaid, Godwin, Thomas Jr. Bench, Algier, Mason, May, Fields, and Wicks. Trade suggestions, it's hard to make trade suggestions before the games have started. It's not hard, but it's like, I don't want to tell you to do something unless I see an egregious weakness or I see an egregious player that I just don't agree with. On your roster, your roster's strong. The guy I don't love here is Chris Godwin. You've got 3 good wide receivers, though. Lamb, Waddle, and Cup. Chris Godwin, I would try to get an upgrade at running back. With Bijan and Ford, I see the strategy you're going for. You're going for wide receiver heavy. I would probably try to trade Godwin for someone like a Brian Robinson Jr. or a Javonte Williams or Tony Pollard. That's probably what I would do. That's the first thing that comes to mind. And then also, with this team, the one thing that I will say is at some point, I envision Jerome Ford being a good sell-high candidate. Look, the thing with Jerome Ford is that, first of all, if you just look at him based on metrics last year and watched him, he was not really that great of a player. He's going to get the workload. He's going to monopolize the backfield in all likelihood. And he plays for a good offensive line. I get it. But just looking at him, he had that same system last year, and he still wasn't very good. So he comes out hot. Teams get used to him. They've seen film on him, and then he just isn't the same player after a little bit. So when Chubb comes back, if he comes back, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he didn't come back. But if he does come back, and when he does, Jerome Ford's going to see a dip in value. So, I would personally be looking, if I had Jerome Ford, I would watch that Nick Chubb news daily. I would be watching it every friggin' day to see when there's even a hint of Nick Chubb coming back into the fold. I would be looking to sell Jerome Ford on the high. That's what I would personally do. Those are my 2 suggestions that kind of jump off the page to me. Bobby Digital, what's going on? Goff, Pirine, or Lawrence Gus? Who would you rather have? Full PPR, 6-point passing touchdown. Just based on running back here, I got to go with Gus Bus. I would go with Trevor Lawrence and Gus because I love Goff. I like him more than Trevor Lawrence in fantasy. But the reality is they're probably the ceiling. The difference in floor and ceiling is probably not as wide as the difference in floor and ceiling between Pirine and Gus Edwards. Samaje Perine's made his wave this week a little bit because obviously he goes to the Chiefs and he took 60 targets basically out of Denver with him. So there is legitimate concern for me when it comes to Pacheco on if he's going to monopolize the backfield. But it's not enough to where I think it's going to eat into Gus, because Gus Bus, I think he will lead the backfield this year for the Chargers. So I ultimately just don't think that it's worth taking Goff over Lawrence in that situation, because like I said, I do think that Trevor Lawrence would be a pretty decent comp if you wanted to go with a quarterback who is maybe a tier lower but didn't present as much drop-off as someone like Gus and P. Ryan. So I would take Trevor Lawrence here and Gus bus side. Guilherme Silva. Who wins the trade? Puka and Mostert / Pittman, Jones, and Moss. By Jones, I'm assuming you mean Aaron Jones. Yeah, I would take the Puka side. Look, the reality with the Puka side is you've got realistically 2 high upside players. Like, Mostert is going to have his weeks. He's going to have his weeks. There's no doubt in my mind. The question I ultimately have with Mostert is how long can he do it this year? Because last year was, honestly, like when you look back into history, last year was an anomaly. Like, that rarely ever happens for a running back at 30-plus years old. The year that he had last year was historic. So I just don't think you should chase outliers most of the time in fantasy football. I think you should appreciate what you had. But at the same time, he's going to have his weeks because this offense is so uniquely designed to benefit 2 running backs in fantasy. Mike McDaniel's a genius fantasy football coach. He's the best fantasy coach in my opinion. I love Mike McDaniel. We should all show appreciation for Mike McDaniel because he is a brilliant schemer who makes this offense incredibly efficient. So, obviously, Puka has upside. He's got tons of it. And Pittman, I like him. I've actually dropped a little bit on him just because after watching Anthony Richardson in the preseason, I'm like, ugh, that's his quarterback? I think Richardson's good. I just don't. I'm not wild on his throwing right now. But Pittman ultimately just doesn't have the Puka ceiling. And I don't think Aaron Jones or Zach Moss have Raheem Mostert's ceiling. So, yeah, Puka's side definitely wins. Guys, make sure you go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And check out Underdog. A big way to support the channel is to go down there, use that link in the description, and sign up for Underdog. And get in on that free Travis Kelce line this week. You got to do it by tomorrow, so you might as well do it tonight. Tom Anderson. Full point PPR. Start which 3 of these running backs? Bijan, Saquon, Gibbs, Jacobs. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you being here, Tom. These 3 running backs, Bijan's got to be one of them. Saquon's got to be one of them. And Jahmyr Gibbs, I would take him over Josh Jacobs. I said it earlier. I said it in the running back rankings video. I actually think Josh Jacobs is going to be really good this year in fantasy. I don't think this is his week. I've been talking about this, and you'll see it tomorrow. Tomorrow, important videos. Kicker rankings video, and if you play IDP rankings video as well. I talk about it more, but I've already talked about it a bunch. This Brazil matchup, I think it's a disaster. I think both of these teams are going to come out looking out of sorts to a certain extent. So, with Josh Jacobs, obviously Saquon's in the matchup. But my thing with Josh Jacobs this week is I'll trust the running back who's going up against the weaker defense. And to me, that's the Green Bay Packers. The Philadelphia Eagles defense, if you hear somebody saying that the Philadelphia secondary or the Philadelphia defense is weak this year, that shows that they're just not paying attention to what they did this offseason. This offseason, first of all, last year, you know who was calling the plays? Matt Patricia. Yeah, the defensive coordinator from New England that got run out of the building out of Detroit because he was horrible at head coach, came back and was an absolute travesty for the Philadelphia Eagles last year as a defensive coordinator. They got rid of that dude so fast this offseason, so he's gone. Addition by subtraction there. Not only did they just fill that spot with a rando, they got Vic Fangio, man. Vic Fangio is a top 3 defensive coordinator in this league. He turned Miami last year into a good defense. And they got better personnel this year. They drafted corner 2 straight, and their defensive front 7 is going to come into its own with Jalen Carter in his second year. So, Eagles defense is tough. And so I just don't think it's Josh Jacobs' week. I think it's more Saquon's week. And then with Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously I just want a part of this Detroit offense in general. And I do want a part of the matchup with the Rams and the Lions this week. So I would take Bijan, I would take Saquon, and I would take Gibbs this week. Miracles, what's going on? Getting offered Laporta and Rice for Nico and Kincaid. Thoughts? Oof, that's tough, man. That's a good one. Because I like all 4 players involved in the trade. I really do. I think they're all really strong players. So, realistically, I think Nico probably has more upside in fantasy than Rashee Rice does. I think Rashee Rice, I love Rashee Rice. I'm not trying to say I don't. We're splitting hairs here on greatness. That's kind of what we're doing right now. And Kincaid is someone I'm really big on this year. I just see, like, for example, the difference between Kincaid and Laporta is Laporta isn't the number 1 target in his offense. Kincaid, I believe, is at this point. They get rid of Stephon Diggs. Who's the guy that emerged last year? Well, it was Dalton Kincaid. He had one of the most legendary tight end seasons. It was actually just overshadowed by Sam Laporta's. So with no more Stephon Diggs and Keon Coleman, I do believe they're going to make a consistent effort throughout the season to turn him into their number 1. I don't think he's ready for it. Just watching him play, he does not look ready. And in the preseason, I just wasn't impressed. So I think Kincaid has a legit chance to be their number 1 target for a lot of this season. Whereas with Laporta, the offense is obviously extremely efficient. Last year, you did look at him, and it's like he had 10 touchdowns last year and barely finished as a tight end 1.5 PPR league. So if you take some of those touchdowns away, that's tough. So I think I would stick with Kincaid and Nico. I think that's what I would do. Judd Dasso, what's going on? Ayuk or Higgins? For this week, I would take... For this week, I would probably take Ayuk. It's really close, though. It does have to do with... I don't know if you guys heard today, but Jamar Chase is back at practice. Jamar Chase returned to practice today. It was triumphant. He made the return today, so he was suited up and looks like he's going to play, which is good. I think it's good for him. That's going to bump T down for me a little bit. So I would go with Ayuk this week. I'd probably go with T. Higgins long term, though. That's just my opinion. JT Blue Gops, kicker video coming out tomorrow. Indeed, it is. Stay tuned tomorrow. Kicker rankings video. Let's go. Chaludo88X. Puka and Mostert. Oh, yeah, you were replying to that one guy. Tabin Kim. Who should I start for running back 2 in PPR? J.K. Dobbins, Chase Brown, or Jerome Ford? Your RB2's got to be Jerome Ford this week. I hate the matchup really against Dallas. I don't think it's good. But ultimately, we just know that he's going to take advantage of the backfield. Whereas with J.K. Dobbins, it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if J.K. Dobbins had 0 carries this week. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I don't think he will. I think he'll probably have at least like 6 or 7. But it wouldn't surprise me. And with Chase Brown, it's kind of similar where it's like you just don't know what those two running backs are dealing with. Now, the good thing with them is that I would say they're both on better offenses than Cleveland's. But again, Cleveland isn't a slouch, and their offensive line is great. So I would ultimately say that I'll take the great offensive line, and the guy I know is going to get the volume, which to me it's going to be Jerome Ford. Clint, what's going on? Richardson versus Houston or Goff versus the Rams this week? So they were obviously really close for me in today's quarterback rankings. If you haven't seen quarterback rankings from today on my channel, go back and watch them after this live stream. Richardson, for me, it is not my favorite quarterback this week. I think he's really volatile. I think that obviously he's got lots of upside, but Goff for me this week, I really like this. Goff is really a guy that I like this week a lot because of this matchup. Like I said, the Rams matchup is going to be good. I think it's going to be really high scoring. What we have to remember about the Rams defense is I don't think that they improved this year on defense. This offseason, I think they made some questionable moves. Like, obviously, when you lose Raheem Morris as your defensive coordinator for a head coaching gig, it's like, okay, best of luck. You earned it. But when they traded, and this is a deeper IDP talking point right here, but when they traded Ernest Jones, their linebacker, away, I was like, what are y'all doing? I mean, what are you doing? So I'm not in love with the Rams defense this year, and I think Goff obviously is playing for an extremely efficient offense. So yeah, I would go with Goff this week. DB cards. Who do I take with the fourth? Well, the fourth overall pick, if Tyreek is there, take him. If CeeDee Lamb's there, take him. If neither of them are there, I would say take Bijan. Or I'm sorry, take Brees. Abraham Pena, what's going on? What's up, my man? My draft about to start in 30 minutes. Well, let's go, baby. Marco A. Sola. Rate my team full PPR. Brees Hall, Chuba Hubbard, Chase Brown, Jordan Mason, Zeke, Ayuk, London, Andrews, Richardson, Keaton Mitchell, Amari Cooper, Godwin, Christian Watson. 12-team league. The rate my team stuff, I'll be honest, is not... I don't prefer to just put a numerical value on this one. I like to think of it in terms of what opportunities you have. Your running backs here, obviously you've got your anchor, your hero running back with Brees Hall. And Chuba's a really good... I mean, obviously I've been screaming about Chuba all offseason. I love Chuba this year. I think that your running back probably could use an upgrade at some point. Ayuk, London, Amari Cooper, Godwin, and Christian Watson. Again, maybe a little bit of a... I would say your wide receivers are high upside. Probably not a ton of floor there. Ayuk, London, and Amari, they're not in the same tier as far as where I would rank them all today, but they're in the same category where it's they have a lot of upside but not a ton of floor. All those guys I think have wide range of outcomes this year, but they're all high upside, so I like your wide receiver room just based on upside. And then you have Andrews at tight end, which is good. Richardson at quarterback, high upside as well. For me personally, at some point I would try to upgrade a running back. A lot is on the table with Chuba. I think he's good for the first 4 weeks at least. Chase Brown may or may not hit. I mean, that's a boomer bust pick right there. He's just a volatile guy. We don't know what his workload is going to be like, and we don't know if he's even that good. So I would personally wait to see how the first couple weeks play out. Then I would probably try to look to upgrade a running back. That's kind of my thought. Jesse Lopez. Hey, man, any thoughts on Alvin Kamara? Yeah, I've got some thoughts. I've got thoughts on everybody. I've got literally a whole tablet in my head on everybody. My thoughts on Alvin Kamara are that he's going to be a good PPR player this year because of just target volume alone. If you look at Alvin Kamara over the last several seasons, he's gone down in efficiency, every year. So, and he's close to 30. So it's yeah, it makes sense. You know what I mean? But at the same time, this dude, if he does do one thing well, still it's pass catching. Last year, he was really good in fantasy just based on pass catching alone. So I think there's going to be a lot of that again with Kamara this year. And I ultimately think I made this analogy a couple weeks ago, and a lot of people didn't like this. I'm not going to change my opinion because I think it's real. I think the Saints are a sinking ship offense. And I think they're a sinking ship team, to be honest with you. I think the Saints are... I don't think Dennis Allen's a good coach. I think that he could be one of the first to get fired this year. I think that this offense made very, very little positive moves this offseason. Personnel, they didn't do anything. Literally nothing. The only thing that anybody can try to rely on is Clint Kubiak coming in to hopefully clean up Derek Carr's game. And even then, like, I love the Kubiaks. Gary Kubiak was a great coach back in, like, the 2000s. You know, at the same time, though, it's like Clint Kubiak, he may be really good, but Derek Carr, I just don't think he is. So I just think this offense is a sinking ship. And so I think that Alvin Kamara uniquely is going to benefit from it because I think Derek Carr will check the ball down quite a bit. And Alvin Kamara is going to be the guy who obviously takes all those targets. Because, I mean, Taysom Hill, I'm sure he's going to have some pass-catching opportunities. We know Kendra Miller is like, he's like borderline on the roster bubble. Like, Dennis Allen doesn't seem to like him. And Jamal Williams is obviously washed up at this point. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on Kamara. I think Kamara is a really good full PPR running back. Not as wild on him in half PPR, obviously. But in full PPR, like, I think he'll make a case to be a top 12 running back in a full PPR league for sure. Guys, questions are filling up. I'm going to stay on here for an hour. So, obviously, with questions filled up here, the only way to jump the line is to do a super chat if you want to get your question answered immediately. Marco A. Sola, Seattle defense and Jake Elliott. LO, sorry it's so long. Yeah, I think, like I said, I went on a little bit of a Seattle defense rant to start this live stream because I got a bunch of flack for not including the Seahawks defense in my top 12 defense rankings yesterday, and it wasn't by accident. Like, I didn't just leave them out because I, like, forgot. I didn't leave them out. I left them out on purpose. And you can go back and listen to that rant if you want to. I'm not going to do it all over again for those who were already here. Guilherme Silva. Cards pick CMC. Let's see. Abraham Pena. I have Lockett for a league. Should I drop him for Ty Chandler? Purdy, JJ, London, Ridley, Hollywood, Wicks, K9, Kyron, Cook, Hubbard, Kittle, and Goddard. 12-man, full PPR, rate also, please. I have Lockett for a league. Should I drop him for Ty Chandler? You know, I really don't think that Ty Chandler, I actually have already kind of like jumped ship a little bit off Ty Chandler. He was actually one of the guys that I was kind of getting more and more big on because like I kept seeing reports obviously throughout the offseason. I'm sure some of you did. Ty Chandler, for a lot of the offseason, was getting a lot of work with the ones and was thought to be the RB, the 1B to the 1A, which was Aaron Jones. It's going to sound hypocritical, but, like, I'm not worried about Kyron Williams taking punt return duties. I'm actually a little bit worried about Ty Chandler taking kick return duties, though. Because I do think that, like, Ty Chandler, I wouldn't rule him out. I wouldn't rule him out personally. But I wouldn't drop someone like Tyler Lockett for Ty Chandler. Looking at your roster, honestly, the guy I probably would drop is Hollywood. Like, Hollywood, to me, I don't think he's good. But really, the way that I would say is that I think if you wanted to do something, you want to go try to trade first. And if you're in a league where you can just trade for fab straight up, I would even trade Tyler Lockett for like $20 or $25 fab. Jesse Lopez, 10-man PPR. Mahomes, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Kamara, James Conner, 49ers defense, Jake Moody, Brandon Ayuk flex. Pat Freiermuth tight end. The only thing I don't like is Pat Freiermuth at tight end. Everything else looks good. Yeah, I think everything else looks good. Not a Pat Freiermuth guy. Not a Steelers fantasy option guy. I've got no interest in any Steelers. The only one I might have interest in is Najee, just that cost this year. But even then, like, no. It's a gross offense, man. It's a gross offense. DB cards. Who should I take with the fourth? CMC, CD, Tyreek are going to be gone. If that's the case, then Breece Hall. Yeah, Breece Hall is the guy that you want. Jamar Chase at this point, missing a bunch of practice time, has kind of bumped him down below Breece Hall to me. I'd probably pick Jamar over Bijan, but I don't think I'd pick him over Breece. So I would say Breece is the guy for me at number 4. Sean 3K, what's going on? Who should I start? Warren, Chase Brown, Rico Dowdle. Thanks, fam. Love your content, by the way. Well, I appreciate you being in here tonight. Jaylen Warren this week is not a bad play, I don't think, considering that he is coming off the injury. You know, all these guys are really close to the same tier for me, but Rico Dowdle's the guy that I like the best. Again, it really does have to do with workload. What's important to remember is that week 1 is the hardest week to predict. And I'm not saying that to excuse myself of bad takes. Trust me, I give myself flack. If you're new to the channel, tune in every Monday night. I go live going through what I got right and what I got wrong throughout the week. So I give myself plenty of flack because it's important to be transparent. The reason I say that is because week 1 is hardest to predict. And so what I typically like to do is go with someone that I know has a more safe workload. And for me, Rico Dowdle is that guy. Like everything that I'm reading about Rico Dowdle, he looks like the guy. He looks like the guy at running back. Again, go back and watch the running back rankings video after this live stream, because this is the report that I saw and I cited in that video is extremely important. And I think it's kind of gone underplayed a little bit. So I would prefer Rico Dowdle over all those guys. But again, they're all relatively close, I would say. JT Blue Gops, trade Keon for Brian Thomas Jr. To me, I look at them both as like longer-term upside guys. They're both going to lose value at the start of the season, I believe. Because I ultimately just I'm not really a big Brian Thomas Jr. guy right away. I like Brian Thomas Jr., the prospect. I think he's super athletic. Was one of my, I drafted him in a dynasty league. Like, I like Brian Thomas Jr. I don't think he's pro ready yet. Like, I don't think he's going to be doing much more than deep balls. I think he'll be good at deep balls, but I don't think he'll do much more than them. So with Keon, they're actually going to try to make him the number 1. I'd probably hang on to Keon, but it's good. It'll be good to remember to expect that they'll both drop in value throughout the first month of the season. Cameron Kaplan, what's going on? I appreciate the super chat. Drop Corum or Brian Thomas Jr. for defense. Bench is Corum, Brian Robinson, Spears, Rice, Dell, McLaurin, Brian Thomas Jr. Don't have Kyron in my lineup. Is stacked, HN, and flex. Yeah, for me, it looks like, from what I can see, you're probably in a 10 or 12-man league. So your waiver wire is going to have guys like Blake Corum, for example. Like Brian Thomas Jr. actually has, I would say, is increasing in trade value, whereas Corum has trade value to the Kyron owner, but other than that, doesn't have as much as Brian Thomas, and he's not actively increasing in trade value. Brian Thomas Jr. is. I would say I would drop, if you need a defense, obviously it looks like you need one. If you needed to drop someone, I would drop Corum. Because I don't think that Corum is going to be involved to a point that's going to be fantasy relevant. You know what it reminds me of, honestly? And I'm not saying that Corum's going to be this bad, but it reminds me of people last year with Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby. People last year were like, oh, dude, Travis Etienne, he's not good in fantasy football. He's not going to be good. And it's like, I was drafting so much of him, and it turned out I was right. And he was a top 3 running back in half PPR. And the reason for it is because Travis Etienne was just a better player than Tank Bigsby. And Tank Bigsby, I'm actually more in on him this year than I was last year. The comparison I draw is that with Kyron Williams, I say this all the time. It feels like a broken record sometimes, but it's true. What people need to remember with Kyron is that last season was not just a regular run-of-the-mill season. Kyron was elite last year. Helped them win tons of games. It wasn't like, do you remember James Robinson back in 2020 for Jacksonville? He came out of nowhere. He was an undrafted rookie, and he came out, was really good. They drafted Travis Etienne the next season because he was an undrafted rookie with zero draft capital, and he wasn't elite in that season. Kyren was elite last year. So it's hard to move on from a guy who was that elite last year. And so with a guy like Blake Corum, I think he's a good handcuff running back, but especially since you don't have Kyren, if you need a defense, you need to drop someone. Corum's the guy that I'm dropping on your roster. And again, Cameron, I appreciate the super chat. With the chat filling up, guys, important to know the super chat is how you jump the line. Galvin, thoughts on Jamar Chase? Yeah, got thoughts on everybody. Thoughts on the Chase situation. So obviously, if you guys did not see it, Jamar Chase returned to practice today. He returned to practice today. He was in gear, and he seemed like he was ready to go from everything that I saw. So it seems like he's going to play this week, which it's a good move for him because I cite this for a reason. The reality with players in the NFL, this isn't NBA. This is not the NBA. NBA, the players have a lot more power realistically because it's a 5-man starting roster in the NBA, and there's typically only 1 to 2 elite players on any team. So the elite player is like, pay me or else. With football, it's not like that, man. Like Jamar Chase can't, like as great as Jamar Chase is, and I know he's great, but he can't realistically convince anybody that he's more valuable than Joe Burrow. So just on that basis alone, like he doesn't have as much leverage as an NBA guy. So that's why I say like the NFL with contract holdouts, people don't need to get as overreactive as sometimes they do. Like watching Ayuk fall in drafts this year was a little interesting to watch. He was more of a unique case, but watching Jamar Chase drop over the past like couple weeks, I've been snatching him up a lot. Like a lot. Because the last time an NFL player did a holdout during the season was Le'Veon Bell back in 2019 or 2018. That went horrific for him. Sitting out a prime year of your NFL career, which is short, is just a bad move. And I think NFL players look to him as that blueprint of why they shouldn't sit. So with Jamar Chase, the only thing that bothers me is that he didn't practice a bunch. But like, reality is like with a guy like him, he doesn't need that much practice time. And obviously him and Joe Burrow are just like so good. They have a great connection. The only thing that bothers me about like elite players missing training camp is because the reality with football is that you can't just like work out every day and consider yourself in football shape. You're in good shape, but you're not in football shape. You're not taking hits. You're not, running routes. You're not with the team every day. It's different. So sometimes like I get worried with injuries, like a pulled hammy or a pulled groin if you miss a bunch of practice time, but I'm ultimately not that concerned with Jamar Chase. Anthony Masha. Jacob's about to go off with a real O-line. Let's go. I expect it. Josh Jacobs, I think, has a really good year. I mean, like I said, this week, it's interesting with Jacobs because, like, he's lower than I wanted him to be. But the Eagles defense, I explained the reason why. But ultimately, like, season long, yeah, I'm big on Josh Jacobs. I've been big on him all offseason, really. I've always found his draft price this year to be a big-time steal. Love this offense. He's never had an offensive situation like this. I mean, with Vegas over the years, it's like Jordan Love is better than Derek Carr. And also, you look at this situation and it's like the offensive line is going to be light years better. So, yeah, big time fan of Josh Jacobs. Cameron Kaplan, I appreciate the super chat. I'm assuming you have a question. Thoughts on Justin Jefferson this year? It's a tough one, man. With Justin Jefferson, my ultimate thought with him is that he's a guy who is going to do his thing because he's an elite player. He's an elite talent that is so elite. I don't worry about him being horrible in fantasy, but there is a tough reality. With wide receivers who have bad quarterback play, it is really hard to overcome. I don't care how good you are. I mean, people point to like Garrett Wilson. I could easily point to Garrett Wilson in this scenario and say, yeah, like look at Garrett Wilson's stat line over the past 2 years. That's not even fair because Garrett Wilson has not touched what Justin Jefferson has done. And I think Garrett Wilson's going to have a great year. I think he is a great player. A more realistic comp for me is Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams, for years and years, has been one of my favorite wide receivers in the NFL. And the way he's declined over the last several years obviously can have to do with age. I don't doubt that. And I think it's true. But the reality is, ever since when they got rid of Derek Carr, he was okay, but he was not brilliant. Last year, he was okay. So I just think with Justin Jefferson, I don't expect brilliance this year from JJ. I don't think that wide receiver 1 on the season is in his cards because the quarterback deficiency matters with wide receivers. I mean, you cannot overcome bad quarterback play. And listen, I've even thought to myself, what if Sam Darnold comes out and surprises people? As weird as that sounds, because Sam Darnold's kind of been a disaster, but I do really like his offensive-minded. Like, I'm a big Kevin O'Connell guy. Minnesota's coach, I love Kevin O'Connell. I think he's a great offensive coach. But I don't think you can really work those horrendous games and moments out of Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's streaky, man. Like, he will make some good throws every game. He's also going to get streaky and get really cold and make bad mistakes. So, Justin Jefferson, I think he's going to be good. I think he'll be a top 12 guy. I ultimately don't think he has wide receiver 1 upside, though. I don't think he has the upside to be a wide receiver 1. I think his upside this year for me is probably honestly, we're probably drafting him at a ceiling. Wide receiver 5 is probably his ceiling this year, unfortunately. But again, I appreciate the super chat. It is the way to jump the line and get your question answered. Brian03, what's going on? I appreciate your super chat, man. 12-point PPR. Double flex. Quarterback, Love. Running back, Josh Jacobs, Kamara, Benson, Gus Edwards, Chubb. Wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, Garrett Wilson, Rice, Watson, Polk, Brian Thomas Jr. Tight end, Andrews. Defense and kicker, Jets and Elliott. Looks great. Yeah, it looks great, man. Love the running back room. You've got a good mix. This is kind of like how I've been building my running back room, honestly. You get a really good running back 1 that you can rely on. And the running back 2 is also reliable. And then you take some swings. With a guy like Trey Benson, and even Chubb is a swing. Because there's no guarantee either of one of those guys hits. But if they do hit, we both know that Chubb has upside. And based on what I know and what I've seen from Trey Benson personally, I'm a dynasty guy. I studied the you-know-what out of Trey Benson this offseason. I'm a Trey Benson guy. I like him a lot. Wide receivers, you've obviously got lots of upside. Justin Jefferson, Garrett Wilson, Rashee Rice. With Watson, obviously tons of upside there. In your wide receiver room, I might look to get more stability. Like, you have Justin Jefferson and Garrett Wilson on the same team is probably something I wouldn't do in a redraft league. That's more of a best ball type of situation for me personally. I don't think that either one of them has a reliable enough floor this year because of not Garrett Wilson, but with JJ, I don't think he has a stable enough floor this season. So I might try to get Garrett Wilson and combine him with. I might try to combine him with a Gus Edwards or a Trey Benson if someone likes Trey Benson, and try to upgrade to AJ Brown is probably what I would do personally. But obviously that's not not everybody's going to take that trade. That's what I would try to do personally. But everything else looks good. Yeah, I mean, you have upside at wide receiver, you have upside at running back, you have floor at running back. The only thing I would say that would make this team better is you have Keon and Jalen Wright on your bench. So more upside. Like, you got more upside on this offense. Your upside is high at every position. What I will say is your wide receivers don't have the safest floor to me. So if you do want, like, typically I like to walk away with, like, at least one guy I feel safe about the floor with. Rice has a safe floor, but I might want to get another guy. So that's the only thing, but it would have to be a unique trade. Don't take what I'm saying the wrong way to say that your team sucks and you need to make a trade today. Like, you can ride out the first week, 2-3 weeks with that roster easy, and you're going to do great. I'm just saying, in a perfect world, if I had to nitpick it, that's the one move I would make. And I appreciate your super chat. The super chats are how you move up, guys. And I'm going to be on here for another 5 minutes, and then I got to get to editing tomorrow's videos. I'm a one-man show over here. So to show your support, go down there, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. And if you enjoy what I do and really want to support, sign up for Underdog. There's a link in the description below. And when you use code FFN, they will give you a 50% deposit match up to $1,000 of bonus cash. And you can get in on that free Travis Kelce line, and it also helps support a bunch. I appreciate you guys. So we're going to take a couple more questions. Comics multiplication. This one looks interesting. Hear me out. Florida has 3 teams right now: Tampa Bay, Miami, and Jacksonville. What if they decided to join forces and form a super team? The Orlando Pirate Catfish. That would be something. It would be something for sure. I think I might want a better name. That is Florida, though. That is Florida. I'm a big Florida guy. I live in Texas, but if I would live anywhere else, it'd be Florida. Big Florida guy. Cameron Kaplan. That was good. That gave me a good laugh. Cameron Kaplan. I need to drop either Corum or Brian Thomas Jr. to pick up my defense. Don't have Kyron help. Yeah, we just talked about this. Yeah, drop Corum. Jacko, what's going on? Just traded Rashee Rice away for Chris Olave in an 8-man PPR league. What are your thoughts? You know, I can see what you're doing here. Like, just based on ADP, it looks like you're getting a major steal. Because the reality with, like, I always make this comparison. Fantasy football is like the stock market. Like, stocks fall, stocks rise. And sometimes, like, with these rising stocks, they're gonna like take, not only come back down to earth, they're gonna take a hard fall. My thing with Rashee Rice, though, I gotta be honest with you guys, he never got to, and I just drafted tonight. I just drafted on ESPN tonight, and it was the Patreon only league that I'm in with my patrons, and hopefully we got some in here who enjoyed it. But tonight, drafting Rashee Rice didn't feel like an overdraft. Like, he has not gotten to the point for me where I feel like I'm overdrafting him. I just don't. Like, he should have never been that low. Never. There's good reason why he was that low, because everybody, including myself, was expecting him to get suspended. But when the closer we got to the season, it was like evident that he wasn't going to get suspended. So it became an immediate, like, smash draft for Rashee Rice over the past several weeks, to the point where his ADP has risen like 3 rounds. I don't find his ADP uncomfortable. And to be honest, like, with Rashee Rice and Chris Olave, there's really not a big enough gap for me to be excited about that trade personally. Like, and I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to dump on your trade or anything like that. It's just like, me personally, I don't see a ton of gap with Rashee Rice and Chris Olave. I think actually Rashee Rice has more upside. I really do. Better quarterback, better offensive situation, and he's going to be the number 1 target. So with Olave, even though he's the number 1 target and probably more talented, it's not worth it enough for me. I probably would have stuck with Rashee Rice personally. I think I would have. Cameron Kaplan, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Drop Gus for Curtis Samuel, Josh Palmer, Dobbs, or Wicks. No, I wouldn't do any of them. Definitely not Curtis Samuel. I'm not in on Curtis Samuel. Look, he's been injured a bunch this offseason. Coming into a new team. Who knows if Buffalo even knows how to use him? I would not say that Buffalo is exactly like the smartest offensive coach team. Now, it does look better with Joe Brady for sure, but Curtis Samuel, I just don't. He's not worth Gus. Josh Palmer is the guy that intrigues me the most because Josh Palmer is. It's tough, man, because with Josh Palmer, it's a guy I've never liked. Like, I've never liked the talent. But at the same time, like, he's got tons of opportunities to be coming his way. So it's tough, man. Like, I really do see the upside with Palmer. I don't think I'm ready to drop Gus. It's kind of interesting. I've seen a lot of drop Gus questions. And I'm not there. I'm not there. For most situations, I'm not on board with it. I think that all of these guys, excluding Curtis Samuel, has upside. But with Gus, like, he's the only one right now I think has a guaranteed. Palmer has a guaranteed role. Dobbs is a guaranteed role. But the thing I like about Gus is that I think he's the better player between him and Palmer. And Dobbs has more competition. Gus is. I just wouldn't drop him. I really wouldn't. I can't see myself dropping Gus. I would if you want Palmer or Dobbs, I'm on board with it. But I would try to drop someone else. Like, if you drafted someone like if you drafted somebody like Zach Charbonnet, I'm cool with dropping him. If you drafted someone like, like even Jalen Polk, I prefer Josh Palmer and Romeo Dobbs over Jalen Polk. Those are kind of my thoughts on that. And again, I appreciate the super chat. Rock out, what's going on? Team quarterback Murray, Goff, running back Achane Walker, Warren Davis, Wright, wide receiver Hill, Marvin Harrison Jr., Terry McLaurin, Rasheed Rice, Khalil Shakir, J-Mo, Marquise Brown, tight end Goddard. Looks strong, man. Quarterbacks are obviously really strong. Achane is obviously a guy that I really like. Walker is a guy I'm getting bigger on, but not there yet. And I might be very wrong. Like, I might look stupid for being this late on the Kenneth Walker train, but I'm just not there yet. Them drafting Zach Charbonnet was just like the dumbest move in 2023. And even though the regime is not there anymore that did, I don't know if Seattle's willing to just like push him aside entirely for Kenneth Walker, because that's kind of what Kenneth Walker needs. Like, he needs to monopolize the backfield because he doesn't see pass catching work really. And I'd say, like, also, if he doesn't monopolize the backfield, he looks at like 12 to 13 points a game, which is good. And it's a good running back too. But I really want him to be the upside guy that I think he can be, but I don't see tons of upside. But I'm not trying to dump on your pick. Like, that's a good pick. Kenneth Walker's your RB2, solid pick. You've got upside at the running back position with Jalen Wright. Really love Jalen Wright. Jalen Warren is fine. If you're talking about Ray Davis, that's a cut for me if you have talent on the waiver wire. Ray Davis, like, unless you have James Cook, and even if you did, I don't like Ray Davis. I did a deep dynasty dive on him. I just don't like him. Like, he just is simply not very good. So I don't love him. I would drop him if you have more talent, like the guys we were talking about earlier. Josh Palmer, Romeo Dobbs. If they're on your waiver wire, I would drop Ray Davis in a heartbeat. Wide receiver, obviously love him. Tyreek and Marvin Harrison Jr., great 1 and 2 combo. Terry McLaurin and Rashee Rice, excellent combo. Your wide receivers are great. Tight end Goddard. You know what I would personally do is I would personally trade one of those quarterbacks to upgrade a tight end. Dallas Goedert worries me as my tight end 1. As my tight end 2, I'm okay with it. Tight end 1, I'm worried about Goddard. High upside. Honestly, it's not even... I don't even know how high it is, realistically. Because it's not like they only have 2 wide receivers now. They got Jahan Dotson. So it's like maybe they plan on using 3 wide receivers more than they plan on using 2 wide receivers and a tight end. So I would personally try to take one of those quarterbacks, trade them to get, package them together with somebody like, I would try to package them together with someone like a Jameson Williams. See if you could upgrade to package them together with Goddard and try to upgrade yourself to like a Jake Ferguson, David Njoku. I think those are better options than Dallas Goedert for me personally. But that's the move that I could think of there. So again, I appreciate your super chat, Rock Out. Alex Hender, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Sent my question a few messages up. Any other Rex? Let's see what you got. Alex Hender. Trying to find you. I'm not finding your chat, Alex. And I want to make sure you get your question answered. So maybe put it down. Sorry, I just can't find it. It must be really up here or I scrolled past it. Yeah, if you can put it up again. Okay, I think I see it. Want to make sure I'm answering the right question, though. 12-man PPR. 3 wide receiver, 1 flex. Mahomes, Garrett, Marv, Ayuk, Rice, James Cook, Mostert, Goddard, Najee, Corum, Brian Thomas Jr., Polk, Dobbins. Thinking of trading Rice and an RB to upgrade my RB2, IDK. Again, make sure that I'm getting your question right. And let me know if I'm not. But I'm going with that. I think that's your question right now. So, 12-man PPR, 3 wide receiver, 1 flex. Garrett, Marv, Ayuk, Rice, James Cook. Your 4 wide receivers, I love them. I love your wide receivers. James Cook and then Mostert in a 2 running back league with a 3 wide receiver league doesn't bother me. I see what you're saying because I was just talking about it earlier. Like, Mostert's going to have his role. Mostert's going to have his role, and he's going to have down weeks too. He's going to boom, and he's going to bust. I can guarantee it with both those guys. I would not personally sell Rashee Rice. I would not. I think Rashee Rice... The thing that I was just saying about Rashee Rice is that since his ADP in drafts rose up so much over the past several weeks, people don't really know where he should be valued at this moment in time because he's rising so fast. So even if you wanted to trade Rashee Rice, I would honestly say chances are good you won't get value. I really do think so. So, and again, considering that it is a 3 wide receiver league, I don't think that you need to upgrade at running back 2 when you've got a really high upside guy at running back 2. What I would suggest doing maybe is I want to stick with your quarterback, obviously. Cook, Mostert, Goddard, Najee, Corum. What I would personally do is I would try to take somebody like a Brian Thomas Jr. or Jalen Polk, pair them together with Dobbins, and see if you can get an upgrade at running back. Like, and those guys aren't obviously going to yield you like a good running back 2 or anything like that. Behind Najee, I'm worried about your depth because, like, in a 3 running back league, I do want to have depth. Or I'm sorry, a 2 running back league, I do want to have depth that I trust, and I don't trust Najee. So I would try to pair Brian Thomas Jr. or Jalen Polk with J.K. Dobbins. Maybe see if you can upgrade to like a Jerome Ford or a a Brian Robinson Jr., a Javonte Williams, Tony Pollard type. That's like what I would suggest doing because J.K. Dobbins, like based on draft capital, is an RB2, RB3 usually. He's an RB3 in drafts. So like I don't think that he's not just a waiver wire guy. Like people are attaching draft capital to J.K. Dobbins. So I would personally try to get one of those wide receivers, one of the rookies who have excitement around them, pair them with J.K. Dobbins, and try to upgrade a running back to like a Brian Robinson Jr. That's the ideal move for me because I like Brian Robinson Jr., but I'm good with Javonte. I'm good with Tony Pollard. I'm good with Jerome Ford as well. Those are my suggestions for you. But again, I appreciate the super chat. We are going in order, guys. But Joe Coughlin comes in with the $10 donation. I appreciate the super chat. What do you think of my team? Quarterback, Mahomes, Love. Running back, Jonathan Taylor, Rachaad White, Raheem Mostert, Zeke Elliott, Jaleel McLaughlin. Wide receiver, Wilson, Cooper, Neighbors, Thomas Jr., Worthy. Tight end, Ferguson, Schultz. 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex. Obviously, love your quarterback situation here. I think I kind of know where I'm going with this, but I'll go through it all. Running backs are good. You are in situation with wide receiver where I probably want to upgrade, and I know exactly what I would want to do. What I would want to do with your team, Joe Coughlin, is when you draft someone like Mahomes, I don't feel the need to go with two quarterbacks. Because in reality, you draft Mahomes that early for him to start all year for you because he's got the upside and the floor to where you don't have to sub him out. So you want to take the swing of just him staying healthy and not getting injured so you don't have to draft another quarterback. And when he misses a week, you just plug in a quarterback off waivers. Like when you draft a quarterback that early, you don't want to draft a guy that high with Jordan Love who's just going to sit on your bench because Jordan Love has tons of upside. So for me, I would be looking to capitalize on getting Jordan Love, pairing him together with another wide receiver again, like a Brian Thomas Jr. I would personally try to trade Malik Neighbors though. I would try to trade Malik Neighbors and get a high upside wide receiver. Somebody like a Nico Collins, a Marvin Harrison Jr. comes to mind. Those top tier wide receiver 2s in fantasy, those are the guys that I would want to get. Because again, Jordan Love is going to provide tons of value to somebody else, way more than he's going to provide you. He provides you value through trades, but he's not going to provide you value with being a fantasy contributor because Mahomes is going to take the cake every week. You don't want Love just sitting on your bench. He's worth more than that. So try to pair up Love with somebody like Malik Neighbors and get a really high upside wide receiver too. That's what I would love to do. So I would trade Love, I would trade Neighbors, and try to go for somebody like a Nico Collins or a Marvin Harrison Jr. That's kind of the group of tiers. Like Puka Nacua. I would shoot for the stars. Because not only is Jordan Love a great quarterback in fantasy this year, but obviously there's a faction of people, and I'm probably not in this camp, who are just in love with Malik Neighbors this year. I'm not in love with him because of the quarterback argument, but you can capitalize on it and get a receiver with a good quarterback. Puka Nacua, Marvin Harrison Jr., Nico Collins. That's what I would personally do. But everyone else looks good. It really looks good everywhere else. So that's the one move I would say is really pressing for me that I would try to make. And again, I appreciate the super chat, Joe Coughlin. Demetrios, what's going on, my man? Good to see you in here tonight. Non-PPR 10-team league. Burrow, Monty, Pacheco, Hill, Metcalf, Rice, Kittle, kicker Aubrey, and Steelers defense. Bench Tua, Gus, Warren, McLaughlin, Coleman. How did I do? Thanks, man. Our league is fun, by the way. Yeah, our league is a lot of fun. We got a great league. The Patreon league is live. It is active. It's going to be a lot of fun this year. I can't wait. And Demetrius is one of those. So With Burrow, like the quarterback, obviously. I think Burrow starts out slow, but he recovers to be good. Montgomery and Pacheco as your running backs here, solid. May want a bit of an upgrade, and we'll go through it. Hill, Metcalf, Rice, Kittle. Hill, Metcalf, and Rice, good wide receivers there. What I would personally do, bench is Gus, Warren, McLaughlin, and Coleman. You have upside on the bench. I like the idea of trying to upgrade at wide receiver because I'm just a you're gonna laugh at this. I'm just not a DK guy, not a DK Metcalf guy. Just think that Jack Smith-Njigba is gonna take control this year. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe you'll hear me on what I got right and wrong, saying how wrong I was about DK. But right now I'm just not big. So like what I would personally try to do is pair somebody like Jalen Warren with somebody like DK Metcalf and try to get an upgraded wide receiver. I would try to get somebody like again, kind of in the similar tier, what I was just talking about. You probably won't be able to get like Nico, Marvin, or Puka. I would try to get somebody in the range of like Debo. No, I wouldn't take Debo. I'd probably want to get like Olave or Pittman, someone like that in exchange for those two guys, and maybe see if you can get a running back like Rico Dowdle as well. That's kind of the move that I would make. But overall, like it looks good. You're good in a lot of areas, and just really excited to be a part of the league. So appreciate the super chat, Demetrios. All right, we're going back up because there was a couple of questions that I skipped over. IMMO Reaper, I appreciate the super chat. What I give Drake London, Dave Montgomery, Derrick Henry, Terry McLaurin. Raheem, Ford, Corum, wide receiver Justin Jefferson, Tank Dell, Shakir, JSN, quarterback Hurts, tight end Laporta, defense Cowboys. What you give, I'm not seeing a trade attached to that, so I'm assuming this is your roster. So Dave Montgomery and Derrick Henry like the running backs, especially when you have Raheem Mostert and Jerome Ford. Wide receivers Drake London, Justin Jefferson, Tank Dell, Shakir, JSN. Again, I'm noticing a trend, and you guys might be too. I'm just more of a wide receiver guy. Wide receiver was the position I played the most in when I was playing football. So I just kind of studied the wide receiver position more. I would have interest in upgrading my wide receiver too. And I think that your running back depth is good. With Drake London, I'm just not big on Drake London. So I would try to take Drake London, pair him up with Jerome Ford, and see if you can try to get somebody like Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, honestly, like that's what I would do. Like they're in the same tier, but I just like him better. So being that they're in the same tier, or basically close to it, I would try to get Marvin Harrison Jr. and maybe again, I would try to take a running back like Rico Dowdle, or maybe a running back like who else in Ford's tier for me? Javonte, Brian Robinson Jr. Those are guys that I would try to get because it's just a personnel thing for me. Like I see what you're doing, and I like the team makeup overall. There's just some disagreements that maybe I have with specific players because I'm just not wild on Drake London personally. So I would try to trade up and get like a Marvin Harrison Jr. or a Nico Collins or Puka Nacua. That's what I would try to do. But overall, like I like your team makeup. It's just a disagreement with just like specifically Drake London. But again, I appreciate the super chat. Seahawks 123, what's going on? Non-PPR, trade Harrison and Connor for Neighbors and Achane. Ayuk, Devonta, Keon, Brees, Dowdle, Brooks, Warren, Keon, and Brian Thomas Jr. Non-PPR, trade Harrison and Connor for Neighbors and Achane. In a non-PPR league, it changes things a little bit for me. In a full PPR league, I would probably do that trade because of Achane's upside. Achane's upside in a full PPR league is astoundingly high. Like, think of Alvin Kamara from several years ago. That's where his upside is. So I love the idea of getting Achane in most other leagues. Non-PPR, I'm not as wild. So I would probably stick with Harrison and Connor. Because with Marv, you know his target share is going to be consistent enough, and he's working with a good quarterback. Him getting 8 touchdowns this year, 10 touchdowns this year, not out of the cards. And then with James Conner, him getting rushing touchdowns is probably maybe not more likely than Achane, because Achane will get rushing touchdowns, but just as likely to get rushing touchdowns because he's a goal line back with a rushing quarterback, and that works for Kyler Murray because they don't run him at the goal line. So there's going to be lots of upside with James Conner at the red zone this year. And Neighbors, like I said earlier, I love the player. He's just screwed this year. I think he is. Like, Daniel Jones will hold him back. He'll have spike weeks, but he won't be as consistent as Harrison. And Achane has a higher ceiling than Connor, but again, won't be as consistent in a full PPR format. So I would stick with Harrison and Connor personally. And again, I appreciate the super chat. J Love Best Love sent a trade question a few minutes ago. Thoughts? Let me see if I can find it. J Love Best Love. Let's see, where are you? J Love Best Love. Can you offer a trade suggestion for Mark Andrews based on my team? So you want to get Mark Andrews? PPR. Allen Henry, Rashad White, Tyreek Hill, Debo Ferguson, Godwin. Bench is Ford, Mostert, Hollywood Brown, Myers, Shakir, Lawrence, Otten. So you want to get Mark Andrews, and you have 2 solid running backs, actually 4 solid running backs. You have really 2 solid receivers. I don't love your depth at wide receiver past Debo. Like, Tyreek Hill obviously is great. Debo's up tons of upside, but I don't like Godwin. Godwin's a great place to start for me. Like, for you personally, like, I think that pairing somebody like Godwin with maybe a Jerome Ford or Raheem Mostert and Jake Ferguson will put you over the edge for sure. But I think you're probably giving too much at that point. I would try to get someone in return along the lines of, like, at the wide receiver position, I would probably try to go for someone in the wide receiver 3 range. So maybe like a Cortland Sutton. I would maybe go for an Xavier Worthy. Maybe a Jack Smith and Jigba in addition. But the 3 guys I would probably center the trade around are honestly, better yet, to give yourself a better chance, I'd probably rather trade Keenan Allen and do that package with him instead. Because Keenan Allen has more upside, I think, and more value based on what I've seen than Godwin. So I would probably try to package Allen with Ford or Mostert and Jake Ferguson and go for Mark Andrews with a wide receiver in return along the lines of like Xavier Worthy, Jackson Jigba, or Cortland Sutton. That's what I would do personally. And again, I appreciate the super chat, guys. Make sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Jonathan Parker, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. 10-man PPR, no kicker and defense. Team is CJ, Monty, Etienne, Harris, Olave, Lamb, Kelsey, Flowers. Bench is Thielen, B-Rob, Worthy, and Addison. Rank and advice. So CJ Stroud, great at quarterback. You're locked in with quarterback here. Solid running backs with Monty. Monty is such a good RB2 in my opinion, like especially if you went wide receiver heavy, which looks like you did, but you also did get a high upside quarterback and tight end, which I like. That's the move right there. Flowers is your wide receiver 3, I think is solid. I think that's solid. And your like Brian Robinson Jr. on your bench is good. Worthy on your bench is good. Addison on your bench is good. Honestly, this is a really good team. There's not a ton I would say you need to do. The only thing I might try to do is try to get a top tier running back. Because Etienne, like, I just haven't been on the Etienne train this offseason. Like, Etienne for me has kind of been, I'm just lower on him this year. Like, last year I was so big on Etienne. I was so big on him. And this year it's just not the same. Like, the difference between last year and this year with Travis Etienne is that last year, Doug Peterson was talking about all offseason how much he wanted to get Etienne to be like a 15 to 1,600 yard guy. So it wasn't surprising like when he turned out to be close to that guy. This year, the narrative has been so much different all offseason, and people choose, like fantasy YouTubers choose to ignore it sometimes. And I'm like, what are you doing? It just seems so crazy. The narrative this year has been, we're going to get Tank Bigsby more involved. All offseason. From Doug Peterson, the head coach. So, you know, I would personally try to get somebody like an upgrade towards the range of like Jonathan Taylor. And what I would do it is I would personally try to package Etienne with a... You know, I say that, and it's tough because your top 3 wide receivers, I like them. I don't really want to move them. I don't think that trying to send Brian Robinson away is a good idea if you're sending Etienne too. And I don't think that Worthy or Addison will get you that big of a yield in return. So, I think that the way your team makeup is right now, honestly, going through it, thinking it all through, as I talk with you, it honestly is probably the best move to just wait and see how things go. Like, your team is not lagging anywhere. You're strong everywhere. There's moves that I think could be made at some point, but as of right now, I don't see any pressing needs that you just need to go out and fix before the start of the season. So right now, like, you're in a position where I don't think I would try to make any moves before the actual start of the season. And I appreciate the super chat. Thomas Brannigan, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Caleb Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Kupp, Devonta Smith Pacheco, Connor, Brian Robinson, Charbonnet, Kincaid, Watson, Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Geno Smith have PPR. Everything looks good. Yeah. Personally, like, if I don't know what quarterbacks are on your waiver wire, but if there's a quarterback like Jared Goff, like I went over earlier, if he's on the waiver wire, drop Geno for him, which he probably isn't, just based on the fact that you do have Geno. Yeah, your receivers are strong. I mean, having Devonta Smith or Cooper Kupp as your wide receiver 3, very strong. Pacheco, Connor, Brian Robinson. Really, for me, like, your starters are good. I would like an upgraded quarterback because I just don't love the idea of relying on rookie quarterback. So, again, you're in a position where you're really strong everywhere else. Like, Kincaid at tight end is elite. The one thing I would change is, like, before the season, maybe looking at your waiver wire, seeing if there's a Rico Dowdle out there, drop Zach Charbonnet. Or seeing if there is a Josh Palmer on the waiver wire, drop Curtis Samuel and get him. What I would keep an eye on, is how Caleb does, because Caleb, I think, is going to be really good, but the reality is the history is against him. Not only with the Bears, but like just with rookie quarterbacks in general. So history is against him being a good fantasy quarterback this year. So I would keep an eye on it, because that's the last thing you'd want to do, is let him kind of take your team. I'd see how the first 3 weeks go, and that's probably the first move that I would make, is try to upgrade a quarterback, personally. And again, I appreciate the super chat. Adel89, I appreciate the super chat. Need to pick 2. Neighbors, Flyers, Dell, Stevenson, Reed. Full PPR. This week, I would say Neighbors is definitely going to be 1 for me. Just because he's like the thing that I will say about Neighbors, and I can see myself liking Zay Flowers more long term. I could see myself liking Tank Dell more long term. But right now we know, again, week 1, I really am just trying to go with guys that I know have the workload. When you're talking about guys who have high upside but don't know what the workload looks like, in a week where I think Houston struggles against Indianapolis, I don't love Tank Dell. And Zay just doesn't have... Zay has a very solid workload, but I don't love Zay's upside in this offense with Lamar. So I would take Neighbors, personally. And I would also play Reed this week, because I think Reed's upside is massive in this matchup. I think this Green Bay Eagles matchup is going to be high upside just because of the potential in this offense, in this matchup. But like I said, I will admit this. I hate the Brazil matchup. I really do. This Brazil thing, I've just read too much bad stuff about like what it looks like over there. It's just like these players. I mean, A.J. Brown, the thing that really just stuck out to me was that A.J. Brown literally came, like, he was talking to a reporter this week, and he was like, yeah, like, I don't think I'm going to leave my hotel room at all. Like, there's a lot of do's and don'ts this weekend. We can't even bring our phones in public. Like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? So, I would say this matchup really I don't like just in Brazil, but the Green Bay offense is really high upside. So I would go with Neighbors, and I would go with Reed. That's my 2 right there. And again, I appreciate the super chat. All right, so we got time for like 1 or 2 more. Tyler Sperry, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Stars, Jaden Reed or Shakir? So I'm assuming you're saying start Jaden Reed or Shakir. Jaden Reed for sure. Khalil Shakir will have upside. He's more of a best ball comfort play for me. Like, it actually kind of reminds me a little bit of Jaden Reed last year, where Jaden Reed, I took him a ton in best ball because I knew the upside was there. Ended up being a really good best ball pick. But for the first several weeks, I would have never told you to play Jaden Reed over a guy I thought was a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. That's like kind of how I feel about Shakir. Shakir, I think, does have upside, but I just kind of want to see it first, whereas with a guy like Jaden Reed, I have seen it. And I do know that he's going to be a consistent target in this offense. So Jaden Reed this week, he's the guy over Khalil Shakir. I just want to see with Shakir first, because we've never seen him be able to match Jaden Reed's production. He's been in the league longer, too. So I'll take one more question, and then I'm going to wrap it up for the night, guys. Appreciate y'all being here. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And go check out Underdog. Make sure to sign up on Underdog tonight. Take advantage of that Travis Kelce line. It is a free half a yard over line. That is all you need to do to basically win money. So take advantage of it before tomorrow. And there's a link in the description. Uh, Kaiser, 12-man full PPR. I have Brees, Puka, Hurts, DJ Moore, T. Higgins, Brock Bowers, Stevenson, Deontay Johnson, Warren, Trey Benson, and Mayers. What should I trade to make my team better? 2 wide receiver, 2 running back, 1 flex. You know, you really had me like on your team big time until you said Brock Bowers is your starting tight end. I can't get on board with it. My thing with, you know, and I get it. The hype with him is so ridiculous this year. It's very similar to Kyle Pitts a couple years back. And also, like, with Sam Laporta and what he did last year, and even if you want to throw Dalton Kincaid in there, what they both did at the tight end position was incredible as rookies. So there is, like, kind of revived hope for rookie tight ends. I would say don't chase an outlier. And in this case, he's an outlier. And the difference between him and those two, Kincaid and Laporta last year, is those two guys had great offensive situations. Fantastic. Top 10, top 5. Mayers is going to be, not Mayers, Bowers is going to be on a bottom 10 offense at the very best, probably. So I don't, you know, that's the one thing that sticks out to me is your tight end situation. I would be trying to upgrade. I would try to look in the direction of, you know, you've got really strong wide receivers. If I traded anyone, I would take a wide receiver. And I'd probably try to take, like, package T. Higgins and Brock Bowers for somebody like a George Kittle or somebody like an Evan Ingram. Or if you can't get either of those guys, I would probably try to, like, I would settle for somebody like Jake Ferguson. Because the difference, again, is all of those guys are on top offenses. With Bowers, you don't get that. So I don't like to rely on rookie tight end as is, and especially one that's in a bad offense. Even though he's a great elite talent, there's just so much to it with tight ends. Like, look at Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is literally the perfect example because Kyle Pitts, rookie year, had Matt Ryan. And while he was on the decline, he still could get him the ball. Ever since then, he's been a bad tight end, and he's honestly the greatest tight end prospect I've seen. I love Bowers, but he's like Pitts coming out of college, people may forget it, was incredible receiving talent. Incredible. But he struggled because he has no quarterback. So with Bowers, like, that's what I would do. Is I would personally try to package T with Brock Bowers and try to upgrade to Kittle and Ingram. Those should be your kind of floor guys you want to, or your ceiling guys you want to go for. If you can't end up getting them, I would settle for a Jake Ferguson. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off for the night, guys. Got to edit the videos for tomorrow. Important videos tomorrow, kicker rankings, and for those of you who play IDP rankings as well. So make sure on the way out, drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel to show your support if you haven't done so already. Check out Underdog. Go to Underdog. Sign up using code FFN. And if you want to hop in a really fun Discord with myself and a couple other fantasy creators, there is a link in the description for that as well. Over 1,200 members at this point. It's super active. It's super fun. I love engaging with it on there. So let me know what y'all want to do. But either way, I'll see you guys on tomorrow's video. Peace out. Y'all have a good rest of the night.